Hey guys, um, before I start, I want to acknowledge a couple of my own internal parts that want to have an effect on how this video is made. I noticed like a part of me wants to make this video very authentic, maybe wants to start with the conversation. A part of me is thinking about starting this video from the, more of a philosophical, zoom out perspective. A part of me definitely wants to talk about the fact that I'm very annoyed at still having some equipment issues, and another part of me is thinking that this is a very silly thing to say in the video. So I want to acknowledge all this stuff before I actually get into this topic. The reason why I'm doing this is just because I want to make sure that I kind of acknowledge different motivations that I have in the moment of making this video, so that they would not really influence the conversation as much as they would have otherwise. Now, on the topic I want to talk about deep self-shame and self-disgust in all people in general, but in high performance in particular. Just wanting to share some brief thoughts on this. I think it's the reason why I'm mentioning high performance specifically is because I think deep shame is always really only a part of the medallion. The second half of the medallion is usually a feeling of self-inflation. And self-inflation can be shown in different ways. It can be shown in, seeing yourself as great, or maybe seeing yourself as very, very low, but still silently believing that this lowness, not lowness, this process of putting yourself down consciously is somehow making you better than other people. Or obviously you can be, go a more traditional way, so to speak, and you can just try to climb the ladder to feel more comfortable at the top of it. I personally was very lucky to kind of get to the core of this feeling over the last month or so, and was very lucky to do this because it's a very uncomfortable feeling, mate. I think you know what I mean, I know what I mean, but I still have to say that this is very, very uncomfortable feeling that by default you kind of think that you would rather be away from it as much as possible, because why would you want to spend your time with something that doesn't really make you feel good, is the question. But I think if you are watching this video, then you are probably interested in process of self-understanding and self-development, and probably by now you do realize that experiencing discomfort is a critical requirement on the process of getting to know yourself better. So for me, when I encountered this feeling around a month ago, or let me say this, when I was able to face this feeling without turning away from it for a prolonged period of time, this thing only happened around a month ago. Before this, I think I was noticing it sometimes, but it was very brief, and I wasn't really able to catch it because life was moving very fast. Or sometimes I was able to catch it, and if I'm honest, I just didn't want to stay alone with it. But a month ago, I was able to observe it. I was feeling it falling on me, overwhelming me, but in a good way. It felt like I was covered in it, in this feeling. And I decided not to run away from it, not to put on some music, not to try to distract myself, not to do anything that would be very pleasant, very nice, just for the sake of feeling nice. I kind of wanted to treat this feeling more as a friend who I haven't seen in a long time, and try to give this feeling a benefit of the doubt, meaning give this feeling some opportunity to speak through what it might want to speak through with me. Does this feeling have anything to say? And surprisingly, I think there was a lot of interesting findings. First of all, the more I was able to spend time with this feeling without doing anything else, for example, just taking a seat in my chair, looking at the window, falling into that feeling, allowing it to come into my body, allowing it to open up some memories or visuals in my head that would present that feeling, that would allow me to feel it deeper, that would allow me to reach to a new depth in experiencing this particular kind of emotion. I experienced quite a few things. First of all, I definitely felt like this feeling was true, meaning it felt like it was a necessary part of my internal wholeness. And I think maybe you'll see what I mean, because if you're the kind of person who really prefers to think about themselves as, again, speaking of high achievers, right, as achieving, ambitious, pushing forward all the time, then you probably don't really want to think a lot about yourself from the perspective of what you should be ashamed of, because you probably already do a lot of things in your life and you work very hard to try to get away from that feeling as much as possible. You're taking actions so that you could feel comfortable telling yourself that you can be proud and happy with yourself. So to actually find this feeling and not run away from it was an addition to the feeling of wholeness within me, in my internal world, in my internal emotional world. So that's thing number one. Thing number two, the more I spent time with this feeling, the more I was able to notice over the coming days how this feeling appears and transitions and leaves me in some of the normal and regular parts of my day. I was not really noticing this before, but there are many moments throughout the day when I interact with different people, or I just do things around the house, or I do some work, and in the process of being active in these moments, I became much better at realizing when shame or feeling of disgust or feeling of unpleasantness with me or results of my work or the way how I behave or the way how I do things, how much it influences the decisions that I make and how much effect it has on how I feel. And sorry, not how I feel, obviously how I feel, but how much effect it has on indirectly affecting my actions. For example, if I'm in a conversation with someone and then um, you know, I just start noticing the feeling that I don't think this person is enjoying that conversation, or actually is enjoying my company at all, even though this person is my good friend who I know for a fact is enjoying my company because he's the one who is initiating contact, and we've been spending so much time with each other for a long time. There is no reasonable basis to believe that this person is not enjoying my company, or if he doesn't, then it's unlikely that he dislikes it to such a degree that he feels that I better should not be here. You know what I mean? It's all about the matter of degree. And when I noticed things like this, it was quite obvious to me that spending more time with this feeling is important because it increases the emotional capacity to feel things. And as I increase the emotional capacity to experience this feeling, it affects me less. It affects less how worried I am about the results of my work. It affects me a bit less how worried I am with the way how I'm seen by other people, for example. And it doesn't mean that this feeling goes away. It means, imagine I'm at the gym. I start practicing, experiencing this feeling, like I would practice doing dumbbell, for biceps, for example. And over time, I'm able to carry heavier and heavier weight. And then if at some point in my real life I need to carry something like a heavy bag, it's not really that big of a deal. I still feel this weight, it's still work, I still need to put in the effort, but it doesn't overwhelm me anymore. This is something that I've been experiencing with a variety of different emotions, but I think with the feeling of shame and self-disgust, it's something that's even more important to do, because this emotion, you might probably know or you don't, I don't know, but I consider this emotion, and I know this emotion by many other people is considered to be one of the lowest emotions on a relative scale in terms of its heaviness, dullness, the way how heavy it can be felt on the person. So all that is to say that I think for people who are high achieving, who are striving, who are ambitious, I think it's arguably even more important to pay attention to this emotion and develop an ability to withstand it comfortably, because otherwise you will not really know what part of your motivation is driven by your true interest, true passion, true curiosity, or whether it's driven by your desire to run away from a part of you which you don't really like, want to get away from, feeling ashamed or disgusted about. And those things can obviously happen at the same time. It's very possible. And this dynamic is very complex. I'm not going to be covering this whole thing in the video because I'm just not smart enough to know this all and to know this all now. But I do want to mention the importance of recognizing this feeling, spending time with it, not running away from this too fast, becoming a bit more comfortable with this, not so that you start living in this feeling forever and you start craving this, or you start purposefully creating the events like this in your life, because that is not the goal. But the goal is to be comfortable with it just enough that it doesn't overwhelm you in your daily life, and that you are able to recognize the effects on this feeling on your motivation, especially if you want to strive hard somewhere. Because if you are ambitious, if you want to get to, any sort of heights in life, you will need a lot of energy for this. And it's very possible that you might rely on the feeling of shame as a potential energy source to push yourself further. You're gonna, rely on your shame and feeling of being uncomfortable with yourself as the reason to go and take an action. And again, in some right character portions, it's fine. But if it becomes a very deep part of your motivation, or God forbid, the only part of your motivation, that's when it becomes, I don't want to say it becomes bad. I just think it becomes energetically inefficient. We can just do better than this, is my opinion. It's not bad. It's not the end of the world at all. But I think we can just do better. Thanks a lot for listening to this video, and if you have some thoughts on this topic, I would love to hear them below. Thanks a lot.